thought that the best choice for the first talk of this new year is to have our newly assigned, newly appointed professor, Vehbi Baysan. I introduced him to some of you in our last week meeting. His specialization is Ottoman history and Middle East. And he will also serve us as the advisor for the prep class students, those who are learning Turkish and Arabic. And we are very much happy that he's joining to our team. So our team is getting stronger and stronger, and there are new professors also. We are working on them to have them on board as well, so that we can make our team stronger. So today, Professor Vehbi Baysan will be talking about recent developments in the Middle East and Turkey's role as a peacemaker, because Middle East turned into a puzzle. No one knows what's going on. Very difficult to understand the problem and solve the problem. I got an invitation from another country. They are asking me to come there and talk about how to make peace in the Middle East. Like, I'm very hesitant to accept this invitation because like no one knows how to make peace in the Middle East, right? So this war, this stabilizing the Middle East concerns everyone around the world, and Middle East, we have borders in the Middle East, and some people consider us Turks as part of Middle East, although some consider us, Western. So we have an identity problem. Sometimes we are Middle Eastern, sometimes we are European and Western. But in my opinion, Islamic civilization is a Western civilization. The way Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, these are considered as Western religions. And if you take any history of religions book, in those books, religions are classified into two groups. Western religions and Eastern religions. Eastern religions, it's like Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, etc. And then the Western religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So how can Islam be a Western religion, but Islamic civilization be an Eastern civilization? There is a contradiction in the classification. I don't care much whether we are Western or Eastern. I believe Islam is a universal civilization anyway. But if you were to classify geographically, you have to put it in the category of Christianity and Judaism, and because they emerged from the same region. So you can see that we are in a world of shifting boundaries, shifting alliances. Like a month ago, Turkey and Russia, they were at the verge of going to war. Now Russia became best ally of Turkey. They are Russian friends here, right? So shifting alliances. So it's a puzzle, and we have one of the best experts on this issue to shed light on this puzzle and help us to understand it. Thank you very much, Hocam.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and really pleasure to be part of this institution, because we don't find always people speaking universally, especially in such a divided world, isn't it? Everyone defines themselves with really narrow categories, and often forget that we are human beings. Therefore, all my talks, TV appearances, I always emphasize the humanitarian side of any conflict. And this is what I'm going to do here as well. Also, Hocam quite rightly stated, I'm a historian. I studied languages. After that, I studied history. But historians are notorious because they can never start. They have to always go back to find a starting point. Sometimes you may go all the way down to Stone Ages. But I thought I should first remind you very quickly what had happened in the Middle East. So try to understand what's happening today. So it's going to be quick, so we can have some time for your questions, because that's where the interest may be, so we can discuss more. You know, it all, yes, started with so-called Arab Spring. I don't know if you guys see it, but it was quite turmoil in the Middle East, seemingly peaceful region. You know, in Tunis, obviously because some policemen harassed him, and in return he burned himself, which actually sparked what we call today Rabi al-Arabi. And in fact, a couple of years ago, I was with Prince Hassan of Jordan. I don't know if anyone remember, the Crown Prince Jordan, former one. He said, is it Rabi al-Arab or Sahih al-Arab? Is it Arab winter or Arab spring? You can see some leaders were really joking with it, but after everything settled. So as you can see, everyone got online in terms of destabilizing their country. So Tunis was the quickest one, so I'm going to go very quickly. In January, the Tunisian leader actually left the country. And thereafter, that's the photo winner 2012, actually human suffering really went from Tunis to Egypt to Libya, one by one all these leaders collapsed, but the ordinary people paid heavy price, especially in Bahrain. No one ever predicted these demonstrations to start. This was not in the menu. Even the best international experts in the Middle East never predicted this. They said, a couple of scenarios I tell you, well, there may be a war between Israel and Palestinians, maybe Israel and Arab world, maybe actually the ever-growing Islamic parties may overthrow the leadership, maybe a war because of the water, in scarce water conditions in the Middle East may cause war. None of these things happened, but all of a sudden, as of January of 2011, we have all these street demonstrations. Millions of people went in the streets. This was not predicted. No one ever thought about it. In some cases, Tunis, I think 250 people got killed. In some cases, we don't know, but some thousands. But then it turned so much violence that this is in Yemen, that actually country is still pretty much destabilized. And that created also something very unusual, women in the front of demonstrations. So that shows actually a potential of the societies. Probably it was like a pressure, what they call it, when you cook, pressure cooking. So it built up the pressure, and eventually it exploded. So I said Tunis, Zeynel Abidin bin Ali, gone very quickly. Thereafter, I mean, incredible. Mubarak. No one, Egyptian friends tell me, 10 years ago they would laugh at you if you say Mubarak will go. He's gone. Egypt changed. Yes, there are many other problems. Then Libya, I don't know if anyone been to Libya. I've been several times. I mean, how these people ever emerged, ever did something, because thanks to Gaddafi's policies, actually, people like accepted their destiny. And they continue their peaceful life. No one would ever think any kind of rebellion against Gaddafi, and he was in the end, while trying to escape from Sirte, captured and killed. So we started asking, naturally, who is next? I mean, is it, nearby countries? Is it Jordan? Is it Morocco? Is Bahrain, which it happened especially in the Meydan Lu'lu', which is the pearl square. But it just flame went on and on. Yemen, you know, the leader deposed, but he's back. He was seriously injured in a bomb attack. Then stayed in hospital a couple of months in Saudi Arabia and came back. So apparently since negotiations continued, he's staying, he's going, etc. But in the end, he's gone. So Bahrain hardly stabilized. But thanks to Saudi Arabia, because they sent they sent around 6,000 of their elite troops to protect royal family, and they also sent a lot of their heavy weaponry, etc., which worked out very much. So they didn't let Bahrain go. So while we're setting up, the reason I'm detailing all these things that you already know, but sometimes, often the societies, like in Turkey, a lot of people believe that behind all these, United States. Isn't it? Well, United States is ruled by Jews, Israelis, so under every stone Israeli. We sorted out. In fact, there is not much for us to say. I don't know how many of you believe in that, but I don't. I think all these people you see in these photographs, very courageous people. Because in the Middle East, I lived many years. It's not that easy to go out and demonstrate against your people. Yes, of course you can do, but you have no guarantee coming back. Yeah, you will be caught, tortured, killed, no one even can find your body. So I think we should credit these people. That's why those conspiracy theories I will put aside. Morocco. The king successfully diffused the pressure by promising more freedom, you know, giving more chance to parties, to public, change of constitution, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, as we say, the pressure of the streets somehow diffused, and Moroccan leadership actually remained there. But you know, when the demonstrations were taking place, a lot of people thought the king is gone. Now, one of my great surprises was the Oman, Sultanate of Oman. I mean, this Oman is going to go out and demonstrate against what? I don't know, anyone been to Oman? Anyone from Oman? It's such an oil-rich country. And all my friends were super rich. I mean, what do you ask when you go to government? But anyway, they did. Again, a lot of promises, etc., etc., so they stabilized the country. So, it's the list of leadership. Who's gonna go? Who's next? Continue. Just to remind you, 2012, 13. So, it usually followed the pattern when people go in the streets to demonstrate. Leadership actually simply ignore them. Call them names. Like Gaddafi called them rats. Excuse my language, that was the word we used. So who are these people? And then when the demonstrations grow and people, you know, in reaction to state start killing them, leadership realized that they can't really contain them and control the situation. So they say, let's sit and make peace. But after what? After hundreds and thousands of people get killed. So on the fourth stage, leader is gone. Or in the Syrian stage, actually, it turns into a civil war. So now we thought something could happen in Syria, but where in Syria it would start? Is it the capital Damascus? Is it Aleppo? Because in the past there was a lot of problems there, or Homs. Who knows? But it actually came again from seemingly a very insignificant town of Dara. Anyone remember Dara? At the Jordanian border. So, this came as a surprise for many, but for me it wasn't, because Dara, for decades, used to be coming from Turkey and beyond had to use that same autostrade, following from Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and then Damascus. After Damascus, you lead to Der'a, and then you enter Jordan from the town of Ranta. I don't know if anyone been to these areas, but so Der'a economy was based on these people traveling to Jordan or to Saudi Arabia, especially Hujjaj, the pilgrims. You know what happened? 2006, they opened Jabir Crossing. It's like 20 kilometers east of Der'a. That killed Dera''s economy. Because then, after Damascus, you have a huge motorway, very quickly you reach very modern crossing, and then you enter from there to Mafraq, so all the route changed. For us travelers, it was great. But for people of Der'a, that literally killed them, because they have no other means of living. Anyway, so demonstrations started, and again, the regime sees them, well, I mean, let them enjoy themselves a couple of days. After that, we handled them. You know how they handled, they opened fire. When people start dying, things went out of control and went into serious, very, very serious war. And that war actually created their own actors. First, you have Free Syrian Army. So all these so-called moderate opposition, many of the army generals were trained in the Syrian Arab army, left and joined Free Syrian Army, and they actually had quite a lot of success in terms of fighting the regime. But after that, Syrian army was very much, Free Syrian Army, the opposition in general, was accused, ordinary people start calling them fanatic, well, fanatic. So you have literally soldiers fighting in the front against the regime. These are the fanatic, in Turkish. But others, fanatic people, enjoyed themselves in 5-star hotels in Europe, including in Istanbul, with no result from one meeting to another. So that gave very bad name for the Free Syrian Army. And then in 2013, something different happened. All these extremist groups actually offered help to Free Syrian Army to fight against regime. I mean, who can say no? So they joined in the war. And most famous of them is Jabhat Nusra, you remember. So Jabhat Nusra was very successful in cooperating with Free Syrian Army, but soon they started dominating the fight against regime. And, which we will see later, Free Syrian Army almost disappeared now, and you have all these radical groups. So Jabhat al-Nusra was very much supported by the West, and including Turkey. But a year later, 2014, in Libya, look at where, something unexpected, US consulate was killed in Benghazi. Anyone remember him? Chris Stevenson? This boy, very young man, actually was very talented. It seems he studied Islamic sciences and spoke Arabic, and he was supporting the uprising, the rebels, since the beginning in Libya. And this guy, still, Hillary Clinton under investigation for that, giving her a lot of headaches. Why this man was sent from Tripoli to Benghazi without protection, although there were some tip-offs why, the US never protected him. Anyway, but that marks a turning point in US policies in the Middle East. Number one, they immediately gave up on supporting any kind of extreme organizations. And Jabhat al-Nusra automatically put in the terror list. I mean, like a day before you were helping them, day after, Jabhat al-Nusra became a terrorist. So, for example, we should say Turkey delayed in putting Jabhat al-Nusra as a terrorist. Therefore, Turkey was accused of supporting terrorism in Syria. Anyway, Jabhat al-Nusra later turned into, or merged, you name it, I'm going very quickly for those. We find suddenly you have a Dawla Islamiyya في العراق والشام, Daesh or ISIS or ISIL, whichever you want to name. These guys came up in a very, I think, very helpful climate, more than helpful, because at that time you had up to 36 very strong extremist organizations fighting in Syria. Soon we lost contact. I mean, we lost like any kind of link. Who's fighting against who?
Hocam, question.
Yeah.
This is usually spelled with an E, and I've been seeing now spelled with an I.
I insist, and I said this in every international talk in Turkish television, because it is Dawla Islamiyya, Daesh, in Iraq. Iraq is written with I, not with E.
Yeah, why? Okay, that makes sense. Why do they write it with E?
Because the Europeans do that, Daesh.
Okay.
But whenever they say Daesh, it sounds like those electric companies. Anyway. So, Daesh is big. Now, I have to be very careful talking about Daesh because, in my humble opinion, these are the most probably dangerous terror organization in any modern time we have seen, ever seen. Again, of course, if you believe that US formed Daesh, you have no problem. But if I got convinced, I will start forming these kind of organizations in the US so we can give them headache too. But no, Daesh, probably we can say the third form of modern terrorism. Let me explain what I mean. In 1970s, we had international terror organizations. Many of them localized. Like you have Baader-Meinhof in Germany. Anyone heard of them? Baader-Meinhof. They were very successful. And you have Red Brigades in Italy, and some in Greece as well. But in 70s, maximum in 80s, when you capture the leadership, you know, like in Baader-Meinhof, they put them in prison and then they got killed basically, still under very suspicious circumstances. The whole organization collapsed because the brain team is gone. That's phase one, I say. I'm not a terror expert, but just observer. Second stage, second form of terrorism came with Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, very successful in creating sleeping cells. Like we saw this in 7 July attacks in London. Like 5 young men born in the UK, educated there, etc. They decided to blow up themselves and kill a couple of dozen of people. Third, Daesh, actually, in my view and my readings, probably tip of iceberg in Syria and Iraq. Tip of iceberg. The main part of iceberg in Europe and the US. There's enormous support. And we cannot, I think, I may be wrong, but we cannot really explain like they're brainwashed. I don't think so. So, these guys, first, I mean, I can give you a whole lecture about Daesh, how it happened, but they got very upset of Jabhat al-Nusra because they promised, Jabhat al-Nusra promised capturing the Lazkiya area, but at least the northern parts of Lebanon. At that time, something very unexpected happened. There was a town of Qasam. And if they captured that, they were good control any route going to Lazkiya, which is the hometown of a psychologically important place. Something unexpected happened, and Lebanon's Hezbollah joined in the fight. That changed all balance of power in Syria. Because Syrian army, and any army in the world actually, not designed, and they are not capable of fighting against terror organizations. They're not designed for that. Armies are designed to fight against armies, not this kind of militia. But Hezbollah not like that. They have long experience in fighting in Lebanon, South Lebanon, against Israel, etc., and some success. Remember in 2006, if I'm not wrong, when Israel attacked Lebanon, within 2 months, they had to withdraw. They couldn't continue. And while withdrawing, their troops, they also gave back very important areas like Mazar al-Sheba, the Sheba farms, and also Bir Seba, the 7 wells areas, very important areas. So this actually boosted Hezbollah's power. Anyway, when they joined the fight there, Daesh lost hundreds of their fighters, and in return, they became enemy of Jabhat al-Nusra. Anyway, let's continue. Daesh became a dominant power in the region and in Syria and Iraq, and they later went and in probably a day or two occupied second big city in Iraq. That is Mosul. And nowadays, actually we're waiting now, since the preparations are completed in Iraq, and they will free Mosul from Daesh. You see? Who? That's a good question. US, but I think I would like to discuss this as well. So we continue, but it doesn't go. Let's try another one. Bir tanesine... Evet, bir daha basalım. Şimdi, once you have the in war in Syria, let's talk about the actors and how things became very complicated. You just create a conflict. You always find some outsiders jumping in the pool to save you. So we have the Ba'ath regime, first of all, but we have to be careful. This is not the Assad regime. The problem there is the Ba'ath regime. And Ba'ath regime had Iran, came to rescue the regime. But that was not enough. As I mentioned, Hezbollah from Lebanon joined in the fight. But Russia joined in the fight at the time everyone thought, even Russian experts thought that regime ended. That was 2015 summer. And in September 2015, Russia became actively militarily involved in and started air bombardments. However, we know before that they were helping Russia, sent their military experts, but they never actually joined in any kind of military operation, at least that we don't know. But after that, openly, they started supporting Russia. Now, other actors are USA, which they come under every storm, but they don't. They really struggle to develop or form any kind of policy in the Middle East. But they have very successful, very, very successful one policy. It's called, John Wayne in his movies. He says, first shoot and then ask what the number. They shoot. In Iraq, they shot. They killed over 1 million people. And then George Bush said, these bloody Iraqis, why we cannot win their hearts and minds? Well, if you kill over 1 million people, no wonder why. USA really suffered in developing, forming any kind of policy, but Russia was very successful. Because in some Arabic televisions, I joined in discussion with Russian military experts. They're fluent in Arabic, even with local dialects. Whereas in USA, all these Middle Eastern studies departments are shutting down one by one, and they are not replaced. So, it's not a surprise that US is suffering a lot. It's not new, it's not something new. In fact, I give you an example. Last year in, is it January? I mean, I'm getting old now. Either in January 2016 or December, it doesn't matter anyway. A man in Baghdad found dead in his bed. Usually these kind of people normally don't find, you don't find them dead unless someone kills them. This gentleman was instrumental in US attack on Iraq. This gentleman responsible inventing the term called weapons of mass destruction. Have you heard of that? Weapons of mass destruction? Tony Blair is also behind all this. Weapons of mass destruction. The other day they asked him, what happened to your weapons of destruction? Oh, we couldn't find them. Look, he doesn't say it doesn't exist. We couldn't find them. So it may be somewhere in Iraq. So this gentleman is called Ahmed Shalabi. Who is Ahmed Shalabi? An Iraqi moderate Shia. In 1988 and in 1989, he was in Jordan, established a bank called Petro Bank, stole millions of dollars and disappeared. The whole economy collapsed in Jordan. And he was tried in absence and actually sentenced to death. This much caused damage. And they actually smuggled him out of Jordan behind the trunk of a car from Jordan to Syria and out to Iraq, and the man disappeared. And then he emerged Second Gulf War as the US man and actually guiding them. But US later discovered that all the information he gave, like this family is terrorist, this tribe is terrorist, his own rivals, not real terrorists, just keep going and killing them. So just to give you an idea how much US policy suffered. Now, let's continue, as I'm going to give you more. Of course, you have Turkey. Turkey at the beginning really tried very hard, used personal context to be part of solution in Syria at the beginning of the events. I know personally, then the President Abdullah Gül, he sent his special envoy. Now President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he sent all the men, he called the men, but it wasn't possible actually to stop the regime. And then Turkey declared their side, said we are against all these killings and regimes. So let's continue. You have Germany, you have France. Now France, accusing Russia for blocking the peace agreement in Syria, especially in Aleppo. President Putin gave up on visiting France. UK, so you can go on and on about this. But just to give you, when we say actors, US had to do something just to show actually they're still an actor in the region. As summer of 2014, President Obama came up with a peace deal, or rather proposal. And UN Security Council, as an American accent, he said, you know what? Using chemical and biological weapons in Syria is our red lines. Isn't it? If you're a great power, that's what you do. And expect that everyone will be scared of that. Once I heard that, I said, that's it. Someone will always take a chance and go for his red lines. Let's see what happens. Whatever in the Eastern Ghouta, they used biological agent and killed over 2,000, I don't know the number, but some says 1,500, some say 500. Doesn't matter. Tons of people get killed. And then everyone started looking at Obama. Yeah, red line, what happened? But he did not have public support, he did not have means, he had no intention of sending troops to Syria. Who saved them? Russia. Immediately Russia involved. Lavrov said, you know what? International community regime cannot really protect their stockpiles. Why don't we help them to get rid of all these chemical weapons? And I said, so they cleared Syria from the chemical agents and also saved US. Now, come talk about war, etc. You know, in our speeches we talk a lot. Humanitarian side of it. What happened? After years of war, bombing, I don't know what's left. Sometimes they fly over some cities, drones, like Aleppo, I don't know if anyone's seen, but just go around and tell us. Because they bomb and bomb and bomb. So, on the one hand, regime is bombing against terrorists. Russia, against who, I don't know if they consider anyone terrorist or not, but they're bombing, run through. And, you know, opposition bomb and throw bombs. So it's a typical chaos. I mean, look at the city of Homs. These are little pictures, they are much awful ones. Actually, I just avoid adding. But you have Aleppo, I don't know, it's not really clear here, but the souk, like the Grand Bazaar there, such a beautiful historic place, gone. So of course, hurricane, as said, they say, but I don't know anything you can write under these pictures. But one reality, one thing for sure is that country is now really probably back under hit. So you need a lot of time to build back. This is near Damascus, the Palestinian camp Yarmouk, also another tragedy. As a regime blamed Palestinians supporting terrorism and punished them for weeks and weeks and months. They didn't allow any food in that camp and constantly bombed. And what happened after that? Thousands and thousands of people left their places. We have two groups. In Arabic we call them Nazihin, displaced people, and we have Laji'in, which actually like migrants. So almost 50% of country now either displaced or migrated. They left their country. In Jordan, let's start from south. Jordan received, they say, 3 million, maybe more, but majority of them live in camps, especially north of Jordan, near Mafraq. We have this Zatari camp built for 80,000 people. Now seems they're having 350,000 people, keep expanding and expanding. But of course, please think about those people living in camps. It rains in Jordan, and winter is cold, especially at night. And these people trying for 5 years now living there. Many of them, some let's say, went to Lebanon, again another tragedy, a little bit to Iraq, but a lot of people came to Turkey, many of them in hope to, go to Europe to have a better life, but they paid the price. Hundreds of them got on boats, makeshift boats, drowned, died. We don't know how many people went under Asian or Mediterranean Sea now. What we see is whoever actually came to shore. And that's why the humanitarian side of it, very, very important, because people forget. And that little kid, you remember, recently became a symbol of war, if I'm not wrong, in Aleppo. And I'm really puzzled and still cannot understand. Europe was not at all ready for this kind of migration. I mean, these people study in really good universities. I know I taught there, brilliant people teaching, and they have very beautiful careers on their CV, if you look, but yet they didn't think a 5 year of civil war would create migration towards Europe, and they were surprised. First it started at the shores of Italy. Italy doesn't matter, let them go to Italy, but Italy soon couldn't handle all these, and Europe had to interfere. But just to give you an idea, I think it was Belgium's Prime Minister said, we give 33 million euros, let them keep all the Syrians in their land. But at that time, Turkey never internationally mentioned, but would spend 10 billion euros. I mean, just to tell you, give you an example of how much they were far from the reality and the human side of that. Anyway, but I think we cannot really finish any talk if we don't speak about this Shia and Sunni tension, in my view, artificially created, and it worked out. I mean, as though Iran was away from any kind of Middle Eastern politics and away from the, also international markets. Because, you know, I admire US administration in that regard, that they peacefully sorted out Iran's nuclear, let's say, crisis. Even it's yet not concluded, but the idea of Iran's petrol coming into international markets, they started dropping the petrol prices, oil prices, which caused enormous damage on Saudi Arabian economy. But I think the majority of those Shia Sunni population actually gives us an idea why sometimes prolonged conflicts, and sometimes, like in Bahrain case, you know, majority Shia, minority ruling, and Saudi Arabia interfering, and always blaming Iran, of course. Anyway, if you have Shia demonstrating, like in Yemen, Iran behind it. And then once you say that, like today happening, I'm really embarrassed to say, like Saudi Arabia bombing Yemen, and it's not even headlines anyway. Who cares? Why? Because Iran behind it. So, I think that also gives us an idea. Let's, among all these, where Turkey stand, I see Turkey as a balancing regional power because of its nature, its the way it's situated, geostrategic position, as well as Turkey actually, yes, a predominantly Muslim country, but you have this very strong institutions, would be a regional power. We can discuss is whether or not how much Turkey is successful. That, you know, open for negotiation, but in conflict resolution. Sectarianism, I meant here the Mazahib, basically between Shia and Sunni. Turkey should, I don't think it ever took any side, it shouldn't at least. But in the case of, and today it explains as well, Turkish soldiers in Bashika, in Iraq, and the Iraqi government now have this duello between Turkish government and Iraqis. They say, you know, to take your soldiers out, we don't want them here. But in fact, over there's a very key point why Turkey and Bashika should discuss, but they're trying to balance Shia Sunni. I think Turkey is also very much supported by Saudi Arabia and Gulf states. But of course, we should also mention, because our leadership did not mention this internationally, generous host for its neighbors. I mean, Turkey could, but I know they wouldn't, shut the borders and create a human disaster in Syria side of our border, and then maybe international community would interfere. Rather than now, for example, you have this refugees commissioner from the very high commissioner actually of United Nations. They just come, look around the camps and say, guys, you're doing well, and then they disappear, which shouldn't be the case. Now, actually, Turkey still is the answer. You know, they made an agreement with Merkel, and seemingly they diffused this huge problem, migration problem, because hundreds and thousands of people going to these European countries, and you know, public is not really ready for it, and administration is not ready, etc. It's a chaos. Another one is just emerged. Russia, they have their own strategy and plan. We can talk about it. US wants to be part of Syrian crisis, but they both make a huge mistake. They do not consult the regional I mean, like in Turkey. I know in the US case, Turkey doesn't have enough. They just come like cowboy. We have a very good project. They go on, you know, apply their project, and then they fail. Now, Russia and Turkey, Russia and US policies in conflict, in clash, and they both expected mediation or help from Turkey, which, you know, should have actually been consulted at the beginning. This is my point. I know I'm finishing, I don't want to be too boring, but another thing is the strong voice against xenophobia. Time to time, our president come up and talk about it, because unfortunately, when you look from the West, many of you would know, this probably all you see is ISIS. What ISIS doing, what, you know, all this extremism. Islam is not all about that. So I think Turkey playing, but should do more, could do more, whatever you call it, would be, you know, an international asset. I think that's enough. It was quite fast, and this leaves some space for your questions. Thank you for listening.